So let's get this straight. If you've ever watched Cole Palmer give an interview and thought to yourself, this guy must be dumb, it's time to think again. I've got some news for you. Cole Palmer isn't just one of the brightest young footballers in the Premier League, he's one of the smartest players, period. I don't care how awkward or shy he might come across when the camera's on him. On the pitch, he's a genius. You might not see it, but anyone who has followed his career can tell you that Palmer's football IQ is off the charts. That's what truly sets him apart. And he's been like this for years. If you think I'm exaggerating, let's rewind to 2010. Palmer was still a kid growing up in Wythenshawe, Manchester. Back then, he was splitting his time between school, watching his dad play in Sunday League football, and playing grassroots football himself. From the very start, everyone around him knew they were witnessing something special. His talent wasn't something you had to dig deep to see. It was obvious to anyone who watched him play. Even his first coach was in awe. He once said, "Every game, I'd catch myself about to yell, 'What are you doing?' Only to realize 5 seconds later that Palmer had pulled off a pass I didn't even see coming." That's how sharp Palmer's vision on the field was, even as a young kid. His football IQ was already far ahead of most adults, and it was something that made scouts sit up and take notice. By the time he was a teenager, 3 massive clubs, Liverpool, Manchester City, and his boyhood team, Manchester United, were already chasing after him. But here's where Palmer showed his maturity and confidence. When Manchester United told him he'd have to go through a trial before joining, Palmer didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate for a second. He turned his back on United and signed with City instead. Palmer wasn't going to let anyone put his career on hold, not even the club he grew up supporting. That decision, at such a young age, showed that Palmer was thinking steps ahead of everyone else, both on and off the pitch. Fast forward to 2018, and Palmer's career was at a crossroads. He was still at Manchester City's academy, but things weren't going as smoothly as they once had. Palmer wasn't growing as fast as his teammates, and for 2 seasons in a row, his performances had dropped. It wasn't that he lacked talent, he was just being outpaced physically by the other players. While the academy was looking for the biggest and fastest players, Palmer was struggling to keep up. His name came up in a meeting about which players should be let go from the academy. It seemed like Palmer's time at City might be over before it even really began. But then, Jason Wilcox, the academy director, stepped in. Wilcox saw something in Palmer that others were missing. He overruled the decision to release Palmer, insisting that there was more to the young player than what was immediately obvious. When asked what he saw in Palmer, Wilcox said, "He's extremely clever. You guys can't even see the things he's seeing on the pitch." Wilcox's decision would turn out to be a turning point in Palmer's career. Over the next 12 months, Palmer's growth spurt finally kicked in. He shot up from 5'7" to 6'2", seemingly overnight, and suddenly all the physical disadvantages he had been dealing with were gone. By the following season, Palmer was captaining Manchester City's under-18 team to the league title. He racked up 20 goal contributions in just 1,100 minutes. That's an amazing output for any player, let alone one who had just been on the verge of being let go. But Palmer didn't stop there. He led City to the final of the FA Youth Cup, where he assisted their first goal to level the match, then scored the winning goal himself. After scoring, Palmer lifted his jersey to reveal a tribute to Jeremy Whiston, his former teammate who had tragically taken his own life. Whiston had been dropped from the academy during the pandemic, and City had refused to help him find an agent afterward. It was a devastating blow for Whiston, and Palmer's tribute showed just how deeply that loss had affected him. Palmer later said, "Off the pitch, I may not be the loudest guy. I don't say much, but once I'm on the pitch, it all comes out." And that's exactly what happened over the next few years. He continued to impress, but despite his performances, the recognition he deserved didn't always follow. The next season, Palmer was training with Manchester City's first team, but he was still mostly playing with the under-23s. Even after completely dominating players several years older than him and contributing 19 goals in just 1,200 minutes, Pep Guardiola wasn't ready to fully integrate him into the senior squad. Palmer made a few brief appearances for the first team, including one in the League Cup and a few minutes in the Champions League. But it was clear that he wasn't going to get regular game time. Even when he scored his first senior goal for City, followed by a hat trick for the under-23s later that same day, it wasn't enough to earn him a spot in Guardiola's plans. Palmer remained humble through it all. When reporters asked him about playing 2 matches in one day, including scoring a hat trick, all Palmer had to say was, "If there's a game happening somewhere, I want to be in it. It's not a big deal. I think a couple of other lads have done it too, minus the hat trick." Even though this earned him a few more first-team call-ups, including a Champions League goal, it still wasn't the breakthrough Palmer had been hoping for. And then, just when things were looking up, Palmer suffered a foot injury that kept him out for 3 months. During his recovery, Guardiola was too focused on battling Liverpool for the Premier League title to notice how well Palmer had been playing before his injury. Besides Palmer averaging a goal contribution every 85 minutes under Guardiola's guidance, the message was always the same: next year it will be your turn. That promise sounded good, but when City sold Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling in the transfer window, it looked like Palmer's time had finally come. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Palmer made 25 appearances for City that season, but he was averaging just 25 minutes per game. Even though he was now 21 and had won a Champions League medal as part of City's treble-winning team, Palmer knew that his contributions were minimal. He didn't feel like a real part of the squad, and his limited minutes confirmed it. Palmer needed a change, so just 12 days after the Champions League final, he arrived at the Under-21 European Championship with a point to prove. After a slow start, Palmer found his moment in the semi-finals. England's best chance of winning their first Under-21 European trophy in 39 years was slipping away after Morgan Gibbs-White missed a penalty. But Palmer wasn't about to let that happen. He stepped up, assisted the first goal, scored the second, and assisted the third, leading England to the final. In the final, Palmer delivered again. He scored the free kick that won England the title. Now, he wasn't just a Champions League winner, he was a European champion on his own terms. He had proven his value on the international stage, showing that he could step up when it mattered most. With 13 years at Manchester City under his belt, Palmer returned to Manchester as a champion, but the situation at his club hadn't changed. Despite scoring in the Community Shield against Arsenal and scoring again in the European Super Cup, City lost the Community Shield to Arsenal on penalties. So, save from losing one trophy, the UEFA Super Cup, Palmer's answer was simple: no, I want to leave. He knew his worth, and he wasn't going to wait around any longer. For weeks, City tried to convince him to stay, but just when it seemed like they might work something out, Manchester City announced the signing of Jeremy Doku, a move that made it clear Palmer's time at the club was over. After shining with England's under-21s, Cole Palmer knew he needed more regular game time to really prove himself. So when Chelsea signed him in August 2023, it was a big move, but it paid off right away. At Chelsea, Palmer quickly made his mark. His creativity, vision, and coolness on the ball stood out immediately. He scored important goals, set up big plays, and started getting a lot of praise in the Premier League. It was clear to everyone that Chelsea didn't just grab a young talent, they found a real star. Palmer had finally stepped up as a key player for one of England's biggest clubs. Palmer's story from a kid in Wythenshawe to a European champion is a story of perseverance, talent, and intelligence. He may not be the loudest or the flashiest player off the pitch, but his actions speak louder than words. Palmer knows how to make an impact where it matters most, on the field. And now, after years of being overlooked, he's ready to show the world what he can really do. In football, intelligence often gets overshadowed by physicality and flair, but players like Cole Palmer prove that having a high football IQ can make all the difference. From his days in grassroots football to lifting trophies on the biggest stages, Palmer's story is one of determination and quiet brilliance. If there's one thing to take away from his career so far, it's this: never underestimate the power of a sharp mind and a determined heart.